Greetings everyone. This is Dr. Sujata Mudgam, Assistant Professor in Zoology, KTHM College, Nashik. I'll be dealing with Immunology for MSc 2, Semester 3. Today's topic of discussion is innate immunity from Introduction to Immune System. You all know that immunity is a state of protection against virulent dose of pathogen or its toxic secretion. Now, this state of protection, what we are talking about, is because of the virtue of certain structures which are present in our body from the birth, or there are certain components which are additionally being given to the body in the course of time, depending on which the different cells or its functionality, it changes and it leads to imparting immunity. Hence, we can say that immunity can be of 4 different types, which can be broadly classified into innate immunity, acquired immunity, cell-mediated immunity, or humoral type of immunity. Let us see them one by one. Innate refers to inborn immunity, means there are certain components present within the body which take cares against the infection of pathogens which are entering into the body. Say for example, the organs or the organ system or the architecture of the body, and hence this is seen from the birth and therefore it is commonly called as innate or inborn immunity. Likewise, in the due course of time, because of certain vaccination, the cells are triggered to show advanced or enhanced reactions, and hence the immunity which is obtained by such enhanced or advanced nature of cells is called as acquired immunity. This is not natural immunity, but it is seen through certain vaccines. Therefore, it is also called as adaptive immunity. Now, this adaptive immunity is concerned with imparting certain additional functionality to the cell, and it could be cell-mediated immunity. Now, this cell-mediated immunity is also a part of innate immunity because whatever cells which are showing protection against infection, they are from the birth or they are since the birth of individual. Therefore, it forms a part of innate immunity. Some of the cells present into the body after trigger, they are stimulated, and because of this stimulation, they start synthesizing or secreting antibodies. So, immunity which is generated by the action of such secretory cells, that is specifically the B cells, it forms a part of humoral type of immunity. All these different forms of immunity we are going to discuss shortly in different lectures in detail. Today, we'll be focusing only on the innate immunity. As I said, immunity is broadly of 4 types, of which 2 are correlated here. That is, one which is from the birth and it is called as innate immunity, and the second one which is acquired in the lifetime, it is called as adaptive immunity. If we try to find the distinction between these two, we can say that innate immunity is less specific as well as compared to adaptive immunity, and this adaptive immunity happens to be more specific. So what do you understand by this term less specific or more specific? Less specific refers to any kind of pathogen which is making its entry within the human body will be taken care by different cells or the associated structures within the body, and therefore it is not going to discriminate between the different types of pathogen. That means it will not discriminate between the bacterial cell or the viral cell or any other pathogen which has made its entry into the organism. Therefore, we can say that the structures which are associated to fight against or to combat their action against such pathogens, they form a part of innate immunity. That is, they are seen into the body from the birth. Whereas, if I talk about adaptive immunity, there are specific dosage, there is specific kind of what you can say, medication given to a particular kind of infection, and therefore such kind of immunity which is acquired, which is gained by the association of vaccines or medication is called as adaptive or you can say acquired type of immunity. And therefore, because it is specifically seen fighting against a specific type of pathogen, we can call it as more specific type of immunity. For example, I can say a polio vaccine, which is given to an individual, it will take care of infection only against the polio virus and not about against any kind of any other viruses, say for example influenza virus and so on. Because it is specifically fighting against polio virus, we can say it is a type of adaptive or acquired immunity which is very specific to particular type of infection. I hope I am clear to you. Now, let us go into the depth of innate immunity. This innate immunity is also called as inborn immunity, or it is called as a native immunity. Now, innate immunity or native immunity, it is because of the virtue of genetic constitution of the individual. That means the genetic makeup of the body, the genetic makeup of the cell, it plays an important role in showing the strength of innate immunity. We say a person is weak or strong. It is only because of the genetic constitution, the genetic makeup of that individual. And further, we can also say that this innate immunity, it does not depend on the prior contact of the microbes or any kind of immunization. That is the reason we say that this is less specific. If you understand, if you go through the previous slide wherein I have defined the innate immunity to be less specific. It is less specific because it shows its same state or same strength of action against the bacteria, pathogen, fungus or any other parasite which is invading to the organism. And as it does not show any discrimination amongst these two, we can say that it is non-specific in nature, or sometimes it can show specific interaction too. Right? Now, this innate immunity can be studied at three different levels. That is, species level, racial level and the individual level. Now, what is special level of innate immunity? Species, as you all know, is a group of organisms which have the ability to show interbreeding phenomena, and therefore this species, they have almost, we can say, a same type of genetic composition or genetic constitution amongst themselves. Now, this species level of innate immunity, we can say it has a total or partial resistance to pathogen by all the members. That means in a group of individual of a particular species, they will show a specific, or you can say a small resistance to pathogen. For example, this point becomes very clear if I give you an example stating that there are different types of pathogens for different species. Here, if I consider only plant species and animal species, you know that plants pathogen, they can cause diseases only into the plant body and not in the animal, and vice versa. Hence, we can say that the level of innate immunity within species is restricted. So, entire number of population within a species will show a small amount, that is partial resistance or complete or total resistance against certain type of pathogen, right? That means plant viruses, they can infect only plants, animal viruses or animal pathogens, they can infect only animal and not vice versa. In the same way, species, you know, it can be categorized into different races. For example, if I consider humans, human race, if I say geographically, I can distinguish this human races into different region-wise, like I can say Ethiopian race or Australian race or African race and so on, right? That means we are grouping small population depending on their geographical area or geographical location. So they form the races of the species. Now this race, it also plays an important role in showing the development of innate immunity. For example, if I say Algerian sheep, it shows, you can say, resistance against anthrax. Why is it so? It is only because of the sheep breed which is present into the Algerian. Other species of the same, other races of the same sheep species from different geographical area will show susceptibility to the anthrax. In the same way, a human example, if I want to quote, I can quote from Panikkar, wherein it's been stated that the Negroes are more susceptible to TB as compared to Caucasians from USA. What does it mean? It means that Negroes, they are more prone to get infected as compared to the white people. Now the question arises, why is it so? Probably it is because of the socio-economic status of the individual. And that's the reason Negroes are more susceptible to infection as compared to the Caucasians. In the same way, there is resistance to Plasmodium falciparum seen in certain regions into the Africa as well as Mediterranean coast. Probably, again, all these examples what I have quoted, it is because of some specific genetic composition of the individual which makes them either prone to get infected or become susceptible to infection or become resistant to infection, right? Within the races, there are different individuals which are present. Again, within the same races, all the different individuals which are included, they will not show the same level of infection or they will not show the same degree of infection. Why it is so? Once again, the answer lies into the genetic composition or genetic constitution of that particular individual. Now, interesting fact lies in the twins. If the twins are homozygous in nature, then the degree of resistance is almost same. Whereas if the twins are heterozygous in nature, then there is resistance dissimilarity seen in the degree. Or you can say there forms the variation into the infection level into the heterozygous type of twins, right? Next. Now, there are different factors which affects the innate immunity and they can be broadly classified into three forms, that is age, hormones and nutrition. We shall go in detail in these factors. Now, what do you understand by age? If you observe in your surrounding area, you will get to know that the two extremes of the life, that is the newborn as well as the old age, is more prone to infection as compared to the adolescent age or the middle-aged people. Now, what could be the reason behind this? It is only because in the newborn babies, the cells are of course present, but then these cells, they are in immature state. Unless and until the cells attain maturity, they are functionally inactive. As a result of which, the inborn babies, they show more infection comparatively as compared to the adulthood stage or the middle age stage people. In the same way, if I talk about the old age people, therein the cells are mature, but then there is wearing and tearing phenomena which is commonly observed, and at the same time, the number of cells which are present into the old people, they are less as compared to the earlier stages, and therefore this could lead to dropping down or you can say inhibiting the process of fighting against the infection. Hence, we can say that the two extremes of the life, they are more prone to infection. A very interesting fact is about the baby which is in the womb of the mother. wherein you know that the placenta, it acts as a barrier and it prevents all the infection. But then there are certain exceptions to this rule, that is the rubella or cytomegalovirus or Toxoplasmic gonidal, which causes congenital malformation, and this is only because these organisms, that is rubella, cytomegaloviruses or gonidae, it can pass through the placenta and brings about infection, right? So I hope this is clear to you. Now let us talk about the hormones. Hormones, they play a major role in the life cycle of individual. For physiological action or for growth and development, hormones, they play a very important role. On onset of puberty, you can see that tinea capitis is a kind of disorder which is caused by Microsporium odoni. Now, what does it cause? If you can see here the picture wherein on the head there are some kind of you can say infection which is called by Microsporium odoni. This Microsporium odoni, it causes such patchy skull which is seen in between the hair, and that disease is called as tinea capitis. Now this tinea capitis, it gets cured by itself when the individual, it reaches to its pubertal stage. Therefore, we can say that hormones, it plays an important role in development of immunity. It means that probably whatever estrogen or progesterone they are secreted, that could be acting against this Microsporium odoni for not proliferating, and therefore the disease is under the control and it becomes cured when large quantity of estrogen and progesterone, they are secreted into the circulation in the pubertal stage. In the same way, if we talk about the prepubertal girls, their gonococcal infection is more common. But when these girls enter into the pubertal stage, the infection, it reduces or it becomes negligible. A very interesting example of insulin I can quote, which is related with diabetes mellitus. You all have seen diabetic people who get sepsis more easily as compared to any normal. What could be the reason? The reason is the blood of these diabetic patients, it contains large amount of sugar, and as a result of which large amount of bacterial infections, they are seen occurring into such diabetic patient. Hence, we can say that less amount of hormone can lead to bringing about more infection. In the same way, in case of pregnant women, you might have seen that they are more prone to infection. That's the reason we always say that one should take care of the pregnant women. Why is it so? Because the circulatory system of pregnant women, it contains large amount of steroid hormones. And these steroid hormones, it brings about the inflammatory action, and as a result of which that inflammatory action is because of different types of infections. Hence, it is common practice that the pregnant women are taken care as compared to the normal in normal societies, right? Normal society in the sense, the society in which we are living. In the same way, the nutrition, it plays an important role. There is a direct correlation between nourishment and health. If the person is malnutrited, probably he shows more infections as compared to a normal one. And this is only because malnutrited person's cells, they are weak, and hence they are more susceptible to infection as compared to that of the normal individual. Now, there are different barriers which we are going to discuss in innate immunity, and they can be classified as anatomical barrier, physiological barrier, phagocytic barriers, and inflammatory barriers. And all these, they are from the birth, and therefore they form a part of innate immunity. Anatomical refers to associated with certain structures within our body. Physiological, you all know, physiology of the individual or probably the cell, phagocytic action of the cell, and inflammatory, it is a kind of response which is shown by innate immunity. Now let us see these barriers into details. The first one is the first one is anatomical barrier. It is also called as physical and anatomical barrier, and it forms the first line of defense. Now why is it called as first line of defense? Because the best example to describe this physical barrier is skin and mucus. Now if you see the skin, it is an intact largest organ which is seen towards the exterior of the body. Unless and until there is a cut or wound, the organisms, that is different pathogens, it cannot easily invade the body or it cannot move interiors into the body. That means it forms a first line of defense mechanism. It is a part of first line of defense mechanism. In the same way, if I talk about the mucous membrane, so where is mucous membrane? It forms the inner lining of the duct, right? So, unless and until there is a cut or a wound in this inner lining of the mucous membrane, any pathogen which is inhaled or it has made its entry through the food, it cannot make the interior invasion into the body. Therefore, both the skin and the mucous membrane, it forms the first line of defense mechanism. Now let us see them into detail. Skin, you know, is consisting of multi-layers, and broadly we can classify them as epidermis and dermis, right? Epidermis, it forms many layered epithelial lining, and the outermost cell, if I want to talk about, which is towards the exterior of the body, is composed of dead cells with keratin, right? And this epidermal skin, which is intact in nature, it will not make the easy entry of any pathogen. That's the reason, few minutes back, as I said, skin, it forms an organ for first line of defense mechanism. In the same way, dermis, which consists of large amount of connective tissue, blood vessels, hair follicles and glands. There are two different glands which are associated with the skin, that is sebaceous and the sweat gland. And both the secretion of the sebaceous and the sweat gland, it helps in preventing colonization of any pathogen. How is it so? Because sebaceous gland, it secretes the sebum, which helps to maintain the pH between 3 to 5. And this pH is not sufficient or it is not good for the colonization of the pathogen, even if it gets seen residing onto the surface of the skin. Therefore, we can say that both the sebaceous as well as the sweat gland, it helps to inhibit the growth of microorganism. Now let me put all this content in one sentence. When we are talking about first line of defense mechanism with an example as skin, you have to remember that the inner layer, that is the dermis, which contains the gland, and these glands, they are of two types, that is sebaceous gland and the sweat gland. The sweat gland, it contains large amount of salts. So, the salts will change the pH of the secretion, and this pH is insignificant for the growth of pathogen. Therefore, even if the body is exposed to large variety of microorganisms and they are seen residing onto the surface of the skin, they will not be easily colonized or they will not be seen invading into the body unless and until the epidermal layer, it shows some cracks or crevices. Now, how do we get these cracks and crevices? Even if you are scratching with your nails, that can lead to exposing or making small wounds into the skin, and that can lead to entry of pathogen from the outer environment into the body. In this scenario, if the sebaceous glands and the sweat gland, if they are non-functional, then probably the chances of infection becomes twice as compared to an intact skin, right? Now the next, that is mucous membrane. As I said, where do we find this mucous membrane? It is seen in the inner lining of all the duct system, that is your alimentary or the respiratory or urinogenital tract. Now this mucous membrane, it helps to keep the inner surface moist, and at the same time there are certain specialized modified epithelial cells which are concerned with release of mucus. This mucus is a viscous fluid, and this viscous fluid, it helps to trap the pathogen if at all they make their entry via the alimentary canal or the respiratory canal or through the urinogenital tract. And therefore, intact mucous membrane, it helps in preventing the entry of pathogen towards the interiors, that is into the connective tissue or into the circulatory system and so on, right? This is with reference to the normal condition, but there are chances wherein there are certain stubborn organisms like influenza virus or certain bacteria which can still make their entry. Now here if you see the picture, it is from the cube, wherein these are rod-shaped bacterial cells which can which can make their entry through the mucous membrane or mucous cell. Now, how is it so? Because the mucous cells, they show presence of certain receptors which are attached by the hair-like projections of the bacteria or the viruses, and as a result of which there is a strong grip seen between the pathogen as well as that of the cell, and this enable the entry of viruses or bacteria through the mucous membrane, right? Now the next, there are anatomical barriers. Anatomical barriers are associated with certain structures, like if I take an example of eyes. Eyes, they are protected with eyelids, right? Now blinking of eyes, it is involuntary act, and this blinking enables or it prevents the entry of pathogens by not entering into the eyes. And in spite of this, if a stubborn pathogen makes its entry into the eye, even after blinking of eyes, which is involuntary action, then the conjunctiva of the eyes, it prevents the pathogen to make its entry within the eyes. At the same time, because a foreign particle has made its entry within the eye, there is lacrimal gland at the corner of the eyes which starts secreting the enzyme as lysozymes as well as tears. And these tears containing lysozymes, it will knock down the effect of pathogen and it will bring about washing of this pathogen through the eyes. And hence we can say that it will bring about protection against the entry of pathogen. In the same way, if I take an example of nasal chamber. Now you all know that there is a septum in the nose which divides the right nasal chamber and the left nasal chamber, and this nasal chamber, it is lined with large amount of hair-like structures which is called as vestibule. Now if any pathogen, when we are inhaling the air, it is non-specific. We are not choosing only oxygen. We are taking in a mixture of air which may contain different types of microorganisms or particulate matter. Now these microorganisms or particulate matter, they get filtered into the nasal chamber itself, and therefore The clean air, it makes its entry into the lungs through the trachea or through the bronchial system, right? In the same way, there we can say that if I talk about the third example, that is the oral cavity. Now this oral cavity, it is guarded by lips and teeth, right? So when we are opening our mouth during the process of feeding or when we are talking, large amount of air, it makes its entry. So when air is galloped inside, probably there is entry of large amount of microorganisms which is not under our control. Now these microorganisms, they cannot enter within the body. The only reason is there is the architectural nature of the mouth. That means when we are opening our mouth, in between the lips and the teeth, the microorganisms, they will get stuck onto the surface of the teeth itself. And in spite of this, if some harmful pathogen makes their entry into the oral cavity, then the saliva which is naturally secreted into the mouth cavity, it will wash away or it will kill the pathogen because of its alkaline nature. Hence, we can summarize the different aspects of anatomical barriers as they are non-specific in nature and they are first line of defense mechanism. Further, different bodily secretions in the form of tears or the saliva, it helps in imparting protection against the pathogen, and there are certain structures like ciliated epithelium which will prevent the entry of particulate matter or pathogens into the interiors of the body, right? So this forms the anatomical barriers. Now the next is physiological barrier. Now the physiological barrier, it includes temperature, pH and certain soluble proteins. Now how does temperature plays an important role in imparting protection? The best example is of the chicken and the COVID-19. First, we'll see how this temperature it plays an important role in preventing infection. You should always keep in mind that for any living organism to flourish or to grow, it requires an optimum temperature. If that optimum temperature is not provided, then any kind of living cell, it cannot grow, and if there is no growth seen, there cannot be any reproduction or multiplication of the cell. Hence, we can say that change in the bodily temperature within the organism can bring about prevention of infection. Now, how is it so? As I quoted an example of anthrax in the previous slides, wherein I said that Algerian sheep is not susceptible to anthrax. In the same way, chickens also are not susceptible to anthrax. So what does it mean? The bodily temperature of chicken as well as Algerian sheep is very high. Probably that leads to preventing these organisms to get prone to infection by the anthrax. It means that the optimum bodily temperature, if it is high or low, it will not allow even if the pathogens are exposed into the body. Correct? In the same way, if I talk about COVID-19, which is very interesting and we all are in the lockdown state, and here what happens is COVID-19, you all know that it's a virus which is in the surrounding, but then why only humans are getting infected and why not the other animals? It is only because probably the optimum temperature of the human body, it helps to flourish the COVID-19, whereas the bodily temperature of other organisms present into your vicinity does not give the optimum condition in the form of temperature for the development of COVID-19. And that's the reason the other organisms, they are not showing any kind of infection against COVID-19. I hope it is clear to you. In the same way, if I talk about pH, pH is essential. You all have studied in biochemistry that optimum pH is required for any metabolic activity. In the same way, for the development and growth of any pathogen, optimum pH is essential. Low pH or high pH, that is alkaline or the acidic media, will not stimulate or it will hamper the growth of pathogen. For example, as I said that any pathogen which is making entry through the oral cavity, when it gets inside into the oral cavity, that is into the tongue region, therein, because of presence of salivary juices, these salivary juices are alkaline in nature, so it will wash away the pathogen, and at the same time, because of its pH, it will not enable these pathogens to multiply, therefore imparting protection to the individual. In the same way, even if there are certain stubborn pathogen which come across these salivary juices and sustain the salivary juices and finally enter into the digestive tract, will encounter the gastric juices into the stomach, wherein this gastric juice which has the acidic pH will kill or it will knock down the effect of pathogen. Whereas there are certain pathogen which will still sustain their life, and when they enter into the intestine region, the intestinal juices once again which are alkaline in nature will bring about the knocking action. Hence, we can say that pH plays an important role in imparting protection against any kind of pathogen. Some of the ingested microorganisms, they still can survive at higher and lower doses. There are certain exceptions to it, but then they will be taken care by different types of cells which are present, like you can say lymphocytes, macrophages, dendritic cell, and so on. And they form a part of cell-mediated immunity. If you recall the second slide of today's presentation, which was showing different types of immunity, therein I have defined the cell-mediated immunity. So, any pathogen which can overcome the action of pH and temperature and is still circulating within the body will be taken care by the cells of the body, and therefore it forms a part of cellular immunity. Then the third aspect of physiological barrier is soluble proteins. There are different soluble proteins in the form of lysozymes, interferons or complement, which helps in imparting protection. So what are lysozymes? Lysozymes actually are hydrolytic enzymes which are present in mucus secretion and tear. And these hydrolytic enzymes, it helps in bringing about cleaving action of the peptidoglycan layer of the bacterial cell wall. And as a result of which, if the cell wall is perforated, probably whatever internal material of the cell is present, bacterial cell is present, it oozes out, and because there is oozing of the cellular material, probably the cell will be knocked down or it will be killed. In the same way, if we talk about the interferons, these are actually the secretions which are produced by virally infected cell. Please remember here, I said they are produced by virus infected cell. And these interferons, which are secreted by virus infected cells, will be seen binding to the nearby cells into the vicinity, and as a result of which the nearby cell, they will show antiviral state, or they will get to know that certain kind of virus is present into their vicinity, and they will prepare themselves to fight against the infection. So interferons also helps in preventing the infection. Then there are different types of complement. Complement are actually the serum proteins which are always seen into the circulation and they are in inactive condition. Now these serum proteins, actually they become active and they help in damaging the membranes of the pathogen by binding to the pathogen and then bringing about the lytic action. At the same time, some of the serum protein, they have the ability to bind with the antibodies which are seen present onto the surface of the cell, and as a result of which it helps to develop the immunity, or it acts as a booster to the immunity. The best example of complement is collectin. Now this collectin, as the name suggests, collectin refers to something which is going to collect. TIN. IN when we write, it is the name of the protein. So this is a serum protein which will help in gathering different bacteria and forming an aggregation of it. Now this aggregated bacteria is of what use? It will be immediately taken care by other cells, and by the action of phagocytosis, they will be killed. So automatically we can say that the organism, the individual, is getting benefited and is getting immune. Now the third is phagocytosis. Now phagocytosis, this is not a new term to you all know. It is a kind of eating by the cell. Phago refers to eating, cytosis refers to cell. So cell eating is called as phagocytosis. Now how does this happen? With reference to immunity, if I want to say, now the cells which are going to bring about this phagocytic action, they should have a ability to recognize the foreign material from that of the self material. So how do they recognize? They have a specific pattern recognition nature which help them to recognize a class of molecules onto the surface. And this pattern recognition molecules, they are called as toll-like receptors. Now these toll-like receptors, they are present onto the organisms which are identified by the bodily cells, and therefore these bodily cells, they will identify the foreign particle and bring about the action which is called as phagocytosis, right? Now we are going to understand the process of phagocytosis in detail. The process in detail, actually we can say it is a kind of endocytosis. Here you can see the pictorial representation of phagocytosis. Now what we can see here, the first part is, suppose, now here you can see the green bacterium. This is just a pictorial representation. We don't have any green bacterium as such. So the bacteria will be engulfed into the cell by formation of a pseudopodia-like structure, and when the bacteria is engulfed, there is formation of a phagosome. This phagosome, it will get large amount of lysozymes, and then these lysozymes, it will act on the bacterial cell, bring about the lytic action, that is the fragmentation, and all the reduced fragment or the residues of this bacteria, it will again be removed or expelled out. That is, this entire process from the process of engulfing, formation of phagosome till the removal of the residual part is a part of phagocytosis. Now this process of phagocytosis is taken care by different types of cells within the body, like the monocytes, neutrophils, or large number of tissue macrophages. So you may wonder, I am talking about the cells which are into the circulation or which is present into the tissue. What if the pathogen is present into the extracellular fluid? In that case, there is cell-mediated endocytosis, and then instead of pathogen, the fluid which contains the pathogen will be taken care. So taken care in the sense it will be taken up by the cell, indicating that the fluid material along with the particulate matter is taken, and then the phagosome is formed, and then the lytic action, and therefore there will be release of fragmented material. But as here, instead of only particulate matter, there is the fluid component, the phenomena will be defined as inocytosis. Now, the last part is inflammatory response. So, innate immunity, what does it do? It brings about inflammatory response. So, what is inflammatory response? As I mentioned in the earlier slide, there is presence of TLR, that is toll-like receptors. Now, these toll-like receptors present onto our bodily cells, they will identify the lipopolysaccharides which are present onto the pathogens, and the interaction will lead to formation of a response which is called as inflammation. So, this formation of inflammation, it has 4 cardinal signs, and these 4 cardinal signs as per Celsus is formation of rubor, tumor, calor and dolor. So what is rubor? Rubor means redness, tumor means swelling, calor means heat and dolor means pain. Now let me give you an example of an insect bite. Suppose there is a mosquito bite. What can you see? You can see formation of a small patch which is slightly reddish in color, and if you touch that specific area, it appears to be slightly warmer as compared to the other surrounding area. And hence, we can say that these 4 cardinal signs are seen with inflammation. That is, rubor is redness, tumor refers to swelling, calor refers to heat which is slightly warmer, and dolor refers to it is painful, of course. And in the 2nd century, Galen, a second physician, he added the 5th sign of the inflammation as functionalesa, that is loss of function. It becomes senseless, that particular area, it becomes senseless or it loses its function for time being. Now we'll see the mechanism of this inflammatory response. There are 3 major events which are seen occurring for the inflammatory response. The first one is vasodilation, second is increase in capillary permeability, and third one is influx of phagocytosis. Please concentrate onto the diagram here. Onto the lower side, see the cursor where I am moving, it is showing the capillary network which is seen joined with the main blood vessel, right? Now we'll see the mechanism of inflammation. Suppose there is a tissue damage by piercing of mosquito. So the mosquito saliva, it will release certain kind of substances into the body. Now these substances through the bodily fluid will enter into the circulation, and it will come into the circulation through the capillary network, right? Capillary network, because of presence of these secretory substances, will become enlarged. The action of the substances which are released into the saliva will lay its effect onto the smooth muscle layers of the capillary, and these smooth muscle layers, they will help in enlarging the capillary. Because the capillaries are enlarged, obviously the blood vessel which is associated with the capillary, it becomes constricted, right? So this will lead to flow of blood through the capillary with a large pressure, and as a result the blood will start getting accumulated into the nearby area, and this leads to formation of or release of RBC into the vicinity of the secretion, and that leads to formation of rubor. That is the first cardinal sign of inflammation, right? In the same way, when the blood capillary are engrossed, you can say, that means they are enlarged, and the blood vessels, they are constricted. Because of constriction of the blood vessel, the endothelial cells, they are constricted, and there will be large amount of gap generated within the endothelial cell of the blood vessel, right? And as a result of which, the substance which has entered through the capillary will now move across the blood vessel, right? And therefore, we can say that there will be oozing or seeping of the blood, which will lead to release of large amount of bodily fluid into the surrounding media. That leads to swelling or formation of edema, right? In the same way, when there is reddening and edema formed, that time the nearby area which contain large amount of macrophages or different type of other bodily cells, they will start migrating towards the area of infection or towards the area of bite. And this migration is because of the chemotactic action. This migration leads to killing of the pathogen which have made their entry through the bite, and as a result there will be dead remains of the pathogen, and this dead remains of the pathogen along with the digested material or the fluid which is seen into the vicinity leads to formation of pus. So these are the different events which we can see as an inflammatory response and is a part of innate immunity. I hope it is clear to you. Thank you.